and I'll explain exactly why in this video. Now let's examine a brief history of the powers of characters in Dragon Ball Z leading up to Frieza. Now in the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, or the Dragon Ball Z section of the manga, Goku and Piccolo, who were the two most powerful fighters on the Earth at the time, had a power level range of the low to mid hundreds, as Goku without his weighted clothing had a power level of 416, and Piccolo without his weighted clothing had a power level of 408. Now along came Raditz, the older brother of Goku, whose power level was overwhelming compared to Goku and even Piccolo combined, at a power level of roughly 12 to 1500, depending upon which source you decide to go with. Now, although Goku eventually sacrificed his life in part with the help of Gohan and Piccolo to defeat Raditz, Goku really overcoming Raditz's power level might not be too big of a stretch because of the fact that it was only about 3 times of a difference, and Goku was training on King Kai's planet under 10 times gravity, with training that was stated to be equivalent to thousands of years of training that Goku would receive on Earth, but rather on King Kai's planet. So when Goku shows up to fight the Saiyans who have arrived on Earth to kind of get revenge for Raditz, as well as wishing for their own immortality, it makes sense that Goku can now kind of compete with them, even though Goku is now going against the Saiyan Prince and the Saiyan Elite Warrior, who has a power level of 18,000 in Vegeta, which is a significant jump from even Raditz, who is weak by comparison to them. So Goku showing up with a power level of over 8,000 is consistent, as Goku is wearing weighted clothing on top of his normal weight and training under 10 times gravity, so his weighted clothing, which is approximately close to his own weight, would make sense for a 20 times increase. Now, of course, the other characters also grew stronger than Raditz over the course of their training over the course of the 1 year before the Saiyans arrived, which you can also argue might be a little bit kind of much, considering that they only trained under Kami, but aside from that, it's not that big of a jump, since they were still kind of low power levels and low power comparatively to like Dragon Ball Z villains at the time. But Goku, even with a 20 times boost in power, and with the Kaioken, is still essentially defeated in battle by Vegeta, who powers up with his Ozaru form to be a maximum power level of 180,000, which is a gigantic leap in power based upon how strong every other character was before this, and really it made him over 100 times stronger than Raditz, the previous villain of Dragon Ball Z. But at least in this case, Vegeta was using a form which was already pre-established in the series and was explained to be a 10 times increase of his base power. Now, even though this is already a really big jump between the two different arcs and the overall top maximum powers of these villains, the difference between this jump and the jump to Frieza is still significantly higher, as Frieza in his weakest form, as we come to find out, has a power level of 530,000, which is still multiple times stronger than Vegeta at this power level. And all of the foes that Goku and Vegeta come to face on Namek have power levels which scale a little bit easier, say the Ginyu Force, who has the power levels in the range of 40,000, and with Captain Ginyu having a power level of his maximum at 120,000. Now, when Goku first shows up on Namek, he had been training on his way there in 100 times gravity, so it made sense that when he jumped from over 8,000 to 90,000 in his base without Kaioken, that was more of a natural jump in power, and we had more reasons to kind of buy that. However, at this point, Dragon Ball Z started to introduce even further the idea of Zenkais, or near-death boosts in power, which is basically when a Saiyan is pushed to the brink of death, when they come back and they heal, they grow even stronger. However, at this point, the Zenkai started to be a little bit inconsistent to what's actually going on in the show. For instance, Vegeta got a Zenkai after he fought Goku on Earth, and his power level became 24,000, which was a jump of approximately 33% from his maximum of 18,000, or an additional 6,000 power levels, which essentially scaled up to what Goku was at his Kaioken times 3. However, come the fight with Captain Ginyu and onward is where the power scaling really kind of starts to fall apart. For instance, after Vegeta is brutally beaten down by Recoome, when he powers up with his next Zenkai, he can suddenly go toe-to-toe with Frieza in his weakest, most constrained form, and then we discover that Frieza can power up with additional transformations which are restraining his overall maximum power. So in Frieza's second form, the taller one that looks more like King Cold, he can have a power level of over 1 million, which is basically like a double of his 530,000. And then Frieza has a power level, we would assume, of perhaps double what that was in his third form, so 2 to maybe 3 million, because he was able to pretty much easily beat down Piccolo, who was able to hold his own with second form Frieza after he had fused with Nail. And Piccolo's boost itself was a rather kind of ridiculous boost, as Piccolo wasn't really on King Kai's planet for too long, and then when he shows up, he has a power level which is very impressive to Nail, who had already fought Frieza in his weakest form, and had felt a lot of the battles that had already been going on at that point in time, and then when he fuses with Nail, he's suddenly more powerful than Vegeta, Gohan, and Krillin, and even Goku when he shows up on Namek by a significant margin. And then when Vegeta finally gets his own Zenkai and Frieza goes into his final form, despite the fact that Vegeta's power at that point is now even significantly above what Piccolo's was, Vegeta still can't do anything to Frieza, and then come the time that Goku steps out of that healing chamber and that healing tank, he suddenly is more powerful from his Zenkai, despite getting beaten down by Vegeta when Captain Ginyu was in his body, to where he's more powerful than Vegeta and Piccolo. However, he's still pretty much nothing compared to Frieza's final form. Now, Goku's power at this point went from his base form of 90,000, or his Kaioken times 2 of, say, 180,000, and jumped to a power level of 3 million in his base, and yet Goku can pile on the Kaioken times 10 and even the Kaioken times 20, and all he can really do is scratch Frieza at his 50% power in his own base form. Now let's look at it like this comparatively. Goku in his 3 million base at this point when he fights Frieza has jumped in power from the Saiyan arc, which had taken place just about a month ago prior in the series, by nearly 400 times. Whereas Frieza, however, still had a power level of 120 million at his 100% form, which was approximately 40 times more powerful than Goku's base form. So again, comparing to a previous villain, the main villain of the previous arc in Vegeta, Frieza is approximately 6,666 times more powerful in his maximum form and his maximum power than Vegeta was when he fought Goku on Earth just a month prior. And Vegeta, even at his most powerful in his Ozaru form of 180,000 power level, is still not even equal to 1% of Frieza's maximum power, nor is Captain Ginyu, who is arguably the second most powerful member of Frieza's entire organization, not counting his father or non-canon characters, and he wasn't even 1% of Frieza's power either, and even he gave Goku and Vegeta in the same day pretty much a lot of problems. In fact, Frieza was such a difficult opponent to beat and was so powerful that Goku had to be given a new transformation, the Super Saiyan transformation, which amplifies his base form by 50 times just so he could overcome Frieza. However, again, this increases Goku's power overall by 50 times. And this made Goku so powerful that even all of the characters in the same arc as him were pretty much irrelevant in terms of power in the very moment he transformed into that new form. Now, even though in the following arc they did try and do their best to make Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, characters like that more comparable to Goku in terms of power, let's think about all the human characters at the time, because all the human characters, after they died at the hands of Vegeta and the Saiyans, all went to train at King Kai's planet so that they could get more powerful and become relevant again. However, everyone on Namek jumped to such a gigantic degree in power that they pretty much became completely irrelevant because of how powerful Akira Toriyama made Frieza and how powerful he had to make the characters fighting Frieza, namely Goku, just so that they could match up to him and overcome him in battle. So essentially, even though the human characters were pretty much training their butts off and really trying to be able to match up to Goku, and even though at the end of Dragon Ball and at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, they were still somewhat within his kind of range and somewhat within his general scope, at the end of the Frieza arc, they were all completely nothing by comparison. Even Krillin, pretty much at the time, who had been fighting alongside Goku and Gohan and everyone on Namek, and who had gotten his own big boost through his power being unlocked by Guru on Namek, still was unable to do anything by comparison. So essentially, I feel like Akira Toriyama just made Frieza far too powerful in that arc because of the fact that he kept having these new transformations and power-ups to try and make him seem more of a significant threat, to where everyone pretty much became totally irrelevant by contrast. And then come Battle of Gods and come Dragon Ball Super, considering Goku in his base form is still said to be weaker than Frieza's full maximum power, that means that none of the humans ever even came close to approaching Frieza at his maximum either. So essentially, the entirety of Dragon Ball Z, pretty much all the characters just became more background and more furniturized as a result of Akira Toriyama injecting so much power into this Frieza character. And it makes sense that he gave up pretty much on power levels and scaling to larger degrees after the Frieza arc was over, just because of how ridiculous all the boosts became in such a short period of time that you might as well not even catalog it at all. Although I do think he also likely turned it down a notch after this, as it doesn't really seem like the characters jumped that much of power after this point in time. However, I would have to say that the damage had pretty much already been done by this point. Now, I mentioned Dragon Ball Super earlier as well, and you can really argue the same thing about Frieza and Dragon Ball Super. At the end of Battle of Gods, it seemed like they had really established this new hierarchy in tier and power scaling. Basically, characters like Goku, who had become a god, and characters like Beerus and Whis, and gods in general, really were that next step beyond anything Goku could ever train to become, and beyond anything that really anyone could become without specialized training from gods or anything like that. However, come Frieza in Resurrection F again, we learn that Frieza has never trained in his life, and in 4 months he can suddenly become powerful enough to be able to not only fight against base form Goku, but when he transforms into this new higher form, this Golden Frieza that he calls it, he's able to actually overpower and dominate an even more powerful form of God in the Super Saiyan Blue that Goku has achieved, and he just became that powerful through 4 months of training with Togoku. Now, the very idea that Frieza had never trained before in his life is ridiculous enough as it is, because he shouldn't be able to know how to fight or be able to compete with someone who is a master martial artist in fights like Goku or Vegeta, regardless of the fact that he himself has more power than they do. But throwing that aside, the fact that Frieza can jump from 120 million power level in 4 months to something in the billions, trillions, quadrillions, whatever it happens to be, and actually overpower characters that are basically gods at this point in Goku, despite the fact that in the previous movie they had pretty much set up that all these things in the past are kind of going away and they have this new form of scaling, again seem to have kind of ruined the scaling in Dragon Ball Super and kind of ruined the significance and importance of these characters characters becoming gods in the first place, to the point to where fans started to concoct theories to where they actually thought Super Saiyan Blue was weaker than Red, in large part because of the fact that Goku couldn't even beat Frieza, who had trained for 4 months. So again, considering all that Frieza accomplished in such a very short period of time, you can really argue that again in Dragon Ball Super, he kind of set in motion throwing to the wayside power scaling that had just come in, kind of like the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, to where they seemed to be building it up again, trying to pre-establish it to where it made a lot more sense and could be a lot easier for us fans and the audience to understand, and kind of threw it away just for the sake of Frieza needs to be strong, that's the plot. So I feel like after examining what happened in Dragon Ball Z with how ridiculous everything had to become just because of how strong Akira Toriyama felt the need to make Frieza in his maximum power, and then again bringing him back in Resurrection F and kind of redoing the exact same thing and causing all the exact same problems that made us completely have to throw away whatever scaling we had before that, you can argue that Frieza, in both cases where he became really involved in the series, pretty much ruined the power scaling and made this show that was much easier to understand far harder to understand as a result. And again, as I said before, I can kind of understand why he pretty much stopped doing power levels after the Frieza saga, because really he just made it so ridiculous that there wasn't even any point in counting, because big numbers don't really matter at that point. It's more just whatever the plot really requires them to be in terms of their overall power. So what do you guys think? Do you think that Frieza arguably ruined the power scaling in Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, and really the Dragon Ball franchise as a whole? Do you think it was a cool idea for him to be so powerful that they had to make everyone so ridiculously powerful and introduce more and more transformations as it went along? Or do you think it would have just been better that Frieza had been weaker and it was just, you know, him being a power level of like 1 million or something like that in his maximum power, but even that would still be a gigantic leap from the previous villains before that? Let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments section, and if you like this video, make sure to drop a like on it, because it really does help to support this video and this channel, and for this content to reach out to other people who can enjoy it as well. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button and enable notifications so you can see all my videos right away, right when they come out in the future. And as I always say, stick around, because there is a lot more to come in the future.
And you better subscribe!
Warheads collected.
Let's set some on fire.
And that was well done.
In the Dragon Ball franchise, Goku, our main character, has made a lot of tough decisions over the course of the series. However, not all of these decisions have been particularly well made and well chosen. So today in this video, myself and Geekless TV are going to be listing off the 5 times Goku screwed up in the Dragon Ball franchise. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all upcoming videos in the future. Hey guys, Mike here, and today we're going to be listing off those 5 times that we believe Goku really screwed up in the Dragon Ball franchise. And today joining me is someone you've seen on my videos in the past, and his name is...
What's up, guys? MJ from Geekless TV. Thank you for having me back on the channel, Mike.
Yeah, so MJ, we've talked about this a good enough amount of times off the air about how Goku has really kind of made some bad decisions.
Allied key destroyed.
Hello and
welcome guys, this is Wonder from Simple Reviews, and today I'm going to talk about the camera of the LG G5. So how good is the camera of the LG G5? This got me thinking, how well can I answer this question? Because there are a lot of things that we have to consider when talking about the camera on this phone, like going beyond just the two lenses in the back and the 8 megapixel lens in the front. The software of the camera is pretty advanced as well. It's got a great blend of manual and auto modes and many other cool features which makes this device among the best smartphone cameras out there today. Talking about the hardware, the G5 has got two lenses at the back, the primary lens comprising of a 16 megapixel sensor and the secondary lens with the 8 megapixel sensor, which is the wide angle lens giving a 135 degree wide angle view. The front selfie cam has got an 8 megapixel sensor which clicks really good pictures as well. So coming to the software part of it, this is the basic outlay of the camera. Quick tip, when your phone is locked, you can turn on the camera by double tapping the volume down key a couple of times. That's something to keep in mind. Once the camera is open, this is the layout of the camera. We have various options and settings on the left side and the camera and video options on the right side. So there are two things we can do to switch between the two lenses in the back. The first way is by clicking these two icons on the screen on the top. So now we're using the primary lens. If I click this, I switch to the secondary lens. Now I can switch back to the primary lens by clicking the icon next to it. We can also switch between the two lenses by zooming in and zooming out. There's a small pause for about a second for the transition between the two lenses, but other than that it's pretty quick and pretty smooth. Coming back to the software, you basically have three modes. This is the simple mode. Here there aren't any options beside clicking on the screen and taking pictures. This is for easy and quick shooting. There's no video option here either. You just point and shoot. Next we have the auto mode. We have many more options here. You can either turn on or turn off the flash. And if you come to the mode, we have a lot of cool options in here as well. Firstly, we have the pop out. So this basically is a blend of both the lenses at the back. As you can see, the background is of the wide angle lens, which gives a broader view of things, and the pop out in the middle is the primary lens. If you notice at the bottom, we have a few effects we can use to make the picture